The final battle was approaching. Earth's sky, already filled with satellites and defense platforms, now buzzed with activity like a giant hive. Humans had prepared for months, not just with weapons, but with strategy, ingenuity, and their unshakable spirit. Far in orbit, the Empire's grand fleet gathered. Hundreds of massive ships, each armed with devastating weapons, surrounded Earth. Their shadows fell across the blue planet like a dark storm. The Emperor watched from his throne, confident that this time there would be no escape. "This world will fall," he said, his voice echoing through the grand hall. "Let them laugh while they can." But on Earth, humans were not afraid. They watched the Empire's approach with calm determination. And yes, with smiles. In the command center on Earth, leaders from every nation worked together. Engineers, scientists, pilots, and soldiers crowded around holographic maps of the fleet. Every human had a role, and every plan included more than tactics. It included humor. A young pilot, checking his fighter's systems, laughed as he said, "If the aliens think they can scare us, they have another thing coming. Wait until they see my paint job." Another pilot grinned, revealing his fighter's nose painted like a clown's face. "Nothing says fear me like a big red nose." The room erupted with laughter, even as tension tightened the air. Humans understood that courage without joy could be heavy, but courage with joy could be unstoppable. The battle began at dawn. Imperial ships fired their first volleys, streaks of destruction racing toward Earth. Human fighters launched in swarms, smaller and weaker than the enemy, but faster and far more unpredictable. Humans did not hide. They flew boldly, weaving through blasts, dodging the Empire's massive weapons. They joked over comms. "Anyone want to ride on a comet?" One pilot shouted. "Make sure to buckle up." "It's a bumpy trip," another answered. The Empire's commanders were baffled. How could a species face annihilation with such joy? Every joke, every laugh seemed to strengthen the humans, not weaken them. But humans did not rely on humor alone. Creativity became their weapon. Engineers activated clever traps hidden across the solar system. Satellites became decoys. Asteroids were rigged to move unpredictably, and hidden laser arrays fired at Imperial weak points. One large Imperial cruiser was destroyed by a combination of human ingenuity and teamwork. As it exploded, a human pilot over comms shouted, "Smile for the camera, big guy." The laughter of the human fleet was now part of the battle. Each joke, each creative tactic sent a message to the Empire. Humans could not be tamed by fear. The turning point of the battle came when Earth's allies joined in. Species long oppressed by the Empire arrived with their own ships. They had watched the humans, inspired by their courage and humor, and decided to act. From the shadows of space, alien fleets emerged, striking at the Empire from unexpected angles. The combined force of humans and allies surprised the Empire, breaking through formations that had seemed impenetrable. One human pilot shouted, "See? We told you we had friends." "Who's laughing now?" The Empire's soldiers began to falter. They had never faced an enemy who not only fought but did so with joy. The laughter, combined with clever tactics and the arrival of allies, began to erode their morale. Back on Earth, civilians watched the battle unfold from screens and observation platforms. Children waved at the sky, imagining themselves as pilots among the stars. Families shared meals, songs, and laughter, knowing that their courage mattered. A teacher spoke to her students. "Look at them. Every pilot, every engineer, every soldier. They fight not just with weapons, but with hope. And hope, my students, is stronger than fear." The children nodded, understanding in their simple way that courage could be joyful, and joy could be powerful. The Empire's flagship advanced, hoping to crush the human fleet in a single strike. Its weapons glowed, ready to fire. But humans had one final plan. Teams of pilots, engineers, and strategists coordinated like never before. Small fast ships darted around the massive vessel, confusing its sensors. Hidden energy pulses disrupted its targeting systems. And across comms, humans shouted jokes, taunts, and laughter filling the airwaves. The flagship fired, but its shots missed. Human ships exploited every weakness. Engineers on Earth manipulated the battlefield, and allies attacked from unexpected angles. In less than an hour, the massive flagship, once thought unbeatable, was destroyed. One pilot laughed over comms. "Smile, big guy. Say goodbye to your ego." The Empire's remaining forces wavered. Without their flagship and with morale broken, they could not maintain the attack. Ships began to retreat, Across the galaxy, soldiers whispered among themselves. Could a species so small, so seemingly fragile, truly defeat an empire? Human pilots continued to fly, not in anger, but in celebration. Their laughter was a signal to all watching species. Victory could be joyful, courage could be playful, and no empire was too strong for a united people. After the battle, Earth celebrated. Flags flew, music filled the streets, and laughter echoed across cities. Humans hugged their families, thanked their soldiers, and sang songs to honor everyone who had fought. Leaders from other planets joined in the celebrations, grateful to humans for showing them that courage and joy could overcome even the greatest oppression. A scientist on Earth, looking at the stars, said quietly, "We did not just survive. We inspired the galaxy. Laughter was our weapon, and hope our shield." In the imperial capital, the Emperor watched the reports of defeat. He had never imagined that humans could stand against him, much less triumph. His fleets were broken, his soldiers demoralized, and the galaxy now looked at Earth with admiration, not fear. He sat in silence, realizing a truth he had never considered. Strength was not always measured by weapons or numbers. Spirit, courage, and laughter could change the course of history. Humans had proven it. They had faced the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. And they had responded not with fear, not with despair, but with smiles and laughter. Their ingenuity, unity, and joy had inspired allies and shaken the strongest fleet in the stars. In the end, the galaxy learned something new. Humans were not just survivors. They were leaders of hope, examples of courage, and proof that even the smallest species could rise against the greatest darkness. On Earth, a child looked at the night sky and asked her father, "Will they come back?" Her father smiled, ruffling her hair. "Perhaps, but if they do, we will be ready, and we will smile." Across the planet, humans looked up at the stars, knowing that no matter what came next, they had already won something the Empire could never take: their spirit. And so, Earth stood tall. The Empire had been beaten, not just by weapons, but by something far stronger: human courage, unity, and laughter. The galaxy would remember that victory had a face, and that face was smiling, and humanity. Humanity would always respond with a laugh. The Solarian Empire was old, proud, and vast. For centuries it had ruled the stars with strict order. Their fleets of silver-gray ships patrolled every sector. Their banners of control hung over countless worlds, and their voice was law. The Solarians believed they had seen everything. They had bent dozens of civilizations to their will, some through promises, others through fear, and many through fire. Every new species they met followed the same pattern: at first curious, then cautious, then obedient. So when scouts brought news of a new species venturing into deep space, the High Lords of the Empire showed no alarm. They called the newcomers humans and assumed they would behave like all the rest: bow, surrender, and serve. The first meeting was arranged at the Grand Station of Vayrith, a massive orbital fortress carved into the heart of an asteroid. Its walls shone with polished metal, its halls lined with banners declaring the glory of the Empire. Representatives of the Colorians gathered, dressed in ceremonial robes that shimmered in the light. Their voices carried arrogance, their eyes calm with certainty. They expected the humans to arrive trembling, but when the human delegation's ship approached, the Colorians felt a stir of unease. The ship was small, not polished, not adorned. It was simple, practical, and carried scars of travel. Yet the humans who stepped out walked with steady steps, their posture relaxed but not submissive. Their clothing was plain compared to the Colorian robes, but their eyes carried a spark of energy that unsettled the watching guards. The hall of meeting was vast, echoing with the deep hum of energy conduits. The Solarian governor, Lord Vaynar, sat on a raised seat. His voice was sharp and commanding as he spoke. "Humans of Sol," he declared, "you stand before the Colorian Empire. You are fortunate. Many species wait centuries before earning this honor. Your presence here is proof of our mercy. Now listen well. You will bend to the will of the Empire, provide tribute, and accept our rule. In return, we shall grant you protection, guidance, and a place in our order." The Colorian officers behind him nodded firmly. They had seen this moment many times. The speeches were always the same, and so were the responses: fear, hesitation, then submission. But the humans did not bow. They listened in silence, glancing at one another as if sharing a private thought. And then something unexpected happened. A sound filled the grand hall. A sound no Calorian had heard before. The humans laughed. At first it was a small chuckle, then a ripple of amusement that spread among them. Their shoulders shook, their eyes sparkled, and soon the hall echoed with laughter. To them, the governor's dramatic tone, his carefully practiced words, and the heavy silence of the hall felt so exaggerated that it seemed almost like a performance. The Calorians froze. Soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons. Officials exchanged alarmed looks. Laughter to them was strange. They had expressions of joy and satisfaction, but laughter, raw, unrestrained, was unknown. To them, this response was neither fear nor respect. It was something else entirely. Lord Vaynor narrowed his eyes, his voice low and tense. "Do you mock the Empire?" One of the human delegates, a middle-aged man with calm eyes, stepped forward. His smile remained, though his tone was polite. "No, my lord. We mean no insult. It's just, your words sounded so heavy, so dramatic. Where we come from, such speeches belong in theater, not in conversation. Forgive us if our reaction seemed strange. It is part of who we are." The Calorians were silent. Never before had a species dared to respond in such a way. Most begged for mercy, offered gifts, or swore loyalty. Yet these humans, standing in the heart of the Empire's fortress, spoke lightly, even humorously. The governor's pride burned. He expected fear, but instead received laughter. "You think us a play?" he demanded, his voice echoing like thunder. The human delegate tilted his head, his voice calm. "No, we take you seriously. But we also take life with a smile. Fear has its place, but so does laughter. You may find it strange, but it is what helps us survive." Those words carried more weight than the Calorians realized. Humanity's history was filled with struggle, wars, disasters, and countless hardships. Yet through it all they laughed. It was their weapon against despair, their shield against hopelessness. Where others would break, they endured, and laughter was often the spark that carried them forward. Around the hall, murmurs spread among the Calorian officers. Some felt anger, others curiosity. None of them had expected this. To face the might of the Empire without trembling was bold. To do it while laughing was unthinkable. The governor leaned back in his seat, trying to recover his control. His voice softened, though it carried steel beneath. "We will learn more of your kind before judgment is passed. Until then, remember this. The Empire does not tolerate defiance." The humans bowed slightly, not out of submission, but out of respect for the formality. "We understand," their leader said. "And we hope in time you will understand us." As they left the hall, the Calorians whispered among themselves. Some argued that the humans were fools. Others wondered if their laughter was a disguise for some hidden strength. Lord Vaynor himself sat in silence, the echo of human laughter still ringing in his ears. For the first time in centuries, the Empire felt uncertainty. And it all began with a sound they could not understand. Outside the station, as the human ship departed, the crew spoke softly among themselves. One of them grinned and said, "Did you see their faces? I think we startled them more than they startled us." Their leader nodded. "Good, let them wonder. It might give us the space we need," and so, the first meeting between the Calorian Empire and humanity ended not with fear, not with surrender, but with laughter, a sound that would soon ripple across the stars, challenging an empire's belief in power and control. The Calorian Empire was a machine of order. Every part of it moved with precision, every law carried weight, and every subject knew their place. But ever since the humans had laughed in the grand hall of Vayrith, the machine felt a tremor. The sound had not faded. It replayed in the minds of soldiers, officials, and nobles alike. Laughter. Not fear, not pleading, not silence. Laughter. The more they thought of it, the more it unsettled them. Lord Vaynor, the governor who had led the meeting, sat in his chamber for long hours replaying the encounter. He could still see the spark in the human's eyes. It was not the defiance of rebels or the madness of fools. It was something different. It was confidence born not of strength but of spirit. That disturbed him most of all. In the following weeks, reports poured in from outer sectors where humans had begun settling. Their ships, though small, were active. They built colonies with surprising speed. The land that should have taken years to tame became livable in months. And more troubling than their progress was the attitude they carried. On Tervath III, A cold world known for storms, the Empire's soldiers watched humans laugh as they struggled to build shelters. "Why do they make such strange sounds while freezing?" one officer asked another. The humans fell, slipped on ice, and yet chuckled as if the danger were a game. Even when the storms tore down their first huts, they gathered together, shared warm meals, and laughed around the fires they built from scraps. On Sarith Station, Solarian engineers worked side by side with human technicians. The Solarians were methodical, serious, and efficient. The humans were quick, creative, and often joked while working. When a tool slipped or a system sparked, the Solarians frowned with worry, but the humans laughed, slapped each other on the back, and fixed the problem with renewed energy. By the end of the week, the Solarian engineers found themselves chuckling too, though they did not understand why. The phenomenon spread. Soldiers stationed near human settlements reported strange feelings they had never experienced before. "They make light of everything," one soldier wrote in his log. "Even hunger. Even failure. It is as if hardship is their companion, not their enemy. I do not know whether to respect them or fear them." The High Lords of the Empire gathered in their shining council hall to discuss the matter. They were cloaked in silken robes, their faces stern. A hologram of Lord Vanar stood before them as he gave his report. "These humans," he said, "are unlike any species we have met. They do not tremble, they do not bow easily, and they answer fear with laughter. I cannot tell if it is courage or foolishness, but it spreads among them like fire." The High Lords muttered among themselves. One slammed his hand against the table. "Mockery. They mock us openly. We should crush them before their arrogance infects others." Another shook her head. "Perhaps it is not mockery. Perhaps it is something deeper, a strength of mind. If so, destroying them may not be as simple as crushing insects." Yet another lord leaned forward, his eyes narrow. "Strength of mind or not, the Empire cannot appear weak. If laughter spreads among our own people, discipline will suffer. Order will decay. We must find the truth of this, before it is too late." And so the Empire sent observers, spies hidden as merchants, soldiers disguised as travelers, to watch the humans closely. The observers sent back curious reports. On the frontier colony of Halros, food supplies ran short. The humans gathered in the central square, their stomachs empty, their bodies tired. Yet instead of despair, they told jokes about air sandwiches and laughed until their sides hurt. Then, working together, they hunted, foraged, and created new farming tools from scrap. Within weeks, their colony was thriving again. On another world, a mining accident trapped several humans deep underground. The Solarian rescue teams expected panic. Instead, they heard voices singing and laughing in the dark. When the miners were pulled out days later, they were weak but smiling. One of them even joked to the rescuers, "Took you long enough. We almost started charging rent down there." The Solarians could not understand. Where other species broke under pressure, humans joked. Where others despaired, humans smiled. It was as if their laughter itself carried strength. Whispers spread through the Empire. Soldiers who once looked down on humans now spoke of them with uneasy respect. "They are small," said one, "but they do not bend." Another added, "When they laugh, it feels as if our power cannot touch them." Some Calorian citizens even began copying the behavior. In the marketplaces of Sarith Station, a group of workers tried imitating the human chuckle. At first it sounded awkward, but soon the sound spread through the crowd, and to everyone's surprise it felt freeing. For the first time, ordinary Calorians laughed openly. The overseers grew nervous, for laughter was not in the design of their order. Back in the human colonies, life continued with its rhythm of hardship and humor. Children played among half-built towers. Farmers told jokes while pulling weeds. Pilots laughed over comms even when storms rattled their ships. To them, it was natural. To the Calorians watching, it was revolutionary. The Empire's leaders grew restless. Could laughter truly threaten order? Could it weaken the fear that held their rule together? Lord Vanar, reflecting alone in his chamber, whispered to himself, "They laugh at storms. They laugh at hunger. They laugh even at us. What will they do when we bear our full strength?" He feared the answer. For if laughter could withstand the weight of an empire, then perhaps the empire itself was not as invincible as it believed. And so the confusion spread, not only among the rulers of the Calorian Empire, but among its people, its soldiers, and even within its culture. A sound that had once been strange was now impossible to forget. The humans had introduced it like a spark, and that spark was spreading through the dry, ordered halls of the Empire like fire in the wind. The Empire had ruled for centuries through fear, but fear could not silence laughter, and that truth unsettled the galaxy more than any weapon could. The High Lords of the Calorian Empire had grown tired of uncertainty. For too long, reports of human laughter had reached their ears. Some saw it as harmless, some as dangerous, but all agreed that the Empire must prove its strength. A grand decision was made. The humans would be tested not in words or observation, but in power. A display of the Empire's unmatched military might would remind them of their place. The humans would finally understand that laughter was meaningless before true force. The order spread quickly through the fleets. Armadas were gathered, polished, and prepared. Warships with rows of cannons and glowing engines filled the void, their hulls reflecting the light of distant suns. On every deck, Calorian officers stood tall, certain that the demonstration would end all doubt. The humans were invited, though the invitation was more of a command, to watch the exercise. They arrived in their simple ships, small and scarred from long journeys, a sharp contrast to the gleaming vessels of the Empire. Yet they came with calm eyes and steady steps, curious rather than afraid. The location chosen was a barren system, its star dim and its planets lifeless. The perfect place for a display of destruction. When the humans arrived, the Calorian fleet spread across the blackness of space. Hundreds of ships moved in precise formation, their weapons humming with energy. From the command ship, Admiral Sarath spoke with pride. "Observe, humans," he declared over open comms. "This is the strength of the Calorian Empire. What you see is but a fraction of our power. Remember it well." At his command, the Armada unleashed fire. Beams of light cut across the void, tearing apart asteroids in brilliant flashes. Missiles streaked like falling stars, exploding into clouds of fire. Planetary bombardment cannons fired at the lifeless surface of a barren moon, breaking it into fragments. The display was overwhelming, a storm of destruction designed to terrify. The Calorian officers stood with pride. They expected gasps, silence, or even begging from the humans. But when the comms came alive with the human response, what they heard instead was laughter. At first it was soft, a chuckle, a small burst of amusement. Then it grew. The humans laughed openly, voices warm and uncontrolled echoing across the channels. One voice broke through, cheerful and teasing. "That's a lot of firepower. Tell me, Admiral, are you overcompensating for something?" Another human joined in, joking. "Careful, you'll run out of targets. Unless you plan to start shooting at yourselves." The laughter rolled through the fleet, confusing Calorian officers. Their formation did not falter, but the air of certainty cracked. Never before had anyone dared laugh at the Empire's greatest strength. Admiral Sarath's voice sharpened with anger. "You dare mock us? Do you not see what stands before you?" The human leader, calm as ever, answered. "We see it. It's impressive, truly. But firepower is not everything. You can destroy rocks and moons, yes, but you cannot destroy spirit. And if you think laughter means weakness, then you do not understand us." The Admiral clenched his fists, but deep within a seed of doubt formed. Why did the humans not tremble? Why did they laugh when death itself could be delivered by a single command? In the weeks that followed, the Empire sought to prove its superiority through direct challenges. On distant colonies, Calorian fleets arrived to impose stricter rules. Taxes were demanded, curfews set, punishments threatened. The expectation was simple. Humans would grow silent, as all species had before. But the results were not as expected. On Karthus Outpost, when a Calorian commander ordered workers to double their mining output or face punishment, the humans responded by joking among themselves. One shouted, "Double the work? Then double the lunch too." The crowd laughed, the tension dissolved. And though they worked harder, they did so willingly, not because of fear, but because they supported each other. On Velos 4, when soldiers marched through the streets to show force, children began mimicking their stiff steps, laughing as they turned the parade into a game. Instead of hiding, families watched with amusement. The soldiers, unnerved, quickened their march, but the damage was done. Authority had been weakened not by rebellion, but by joy. Even in conflict, humans showed resilience that shocked the Empire. On the frontier world of Halros, a Solorian patrol attempted to intimidate the settlers by shutting down power to their colony. In darkness and cold, the Calorians expected fear and surrender. Instead, the humans gathered together, lit fires, and sang songs. Their voices carried laughter between verses. When the power returned days later, The humans thanked the soldiers not with sarcasm but with genuine cheer, saying, "It gave us a good excuse for a community gathering." The soldiers left in silence, shaken by what they had witnessed. Bit by bit, the Empire realized that humans were not like the others. Their strength was not in weapons, though they had some. It was not in size, though they were smaller than many species. Their strength was in something invisible, something the Calorians struggled to name: resilience, creativity, humor. They adapted quickly. Where resources were scarce, they invented solutions. Where disasters struck, they rebuilt with smiles. Where fear was expected, they laughed. And in doing so, they confused every attempt to control them. Lord Vaynar, still burdened with the memory of the first encounter, began to see a dangerous pattern. He studied every report, every observation, and came to a conclusion that he dared not share openly. The humans cannot be ruled as others. Their laughter is not weakness, it is defiance, not of us but of despair itself, and such a spirit cannot be broken by force. But the High Lords were not convinced. To them, the humans were still young, still small. They believed that eventually, with enough pressure, the humans would yield. So the Empire continued to underestimate them. They saw laughter as foolishness. They mistook resilience for stubbornness. They believed spirit could be crushed as easily as a rock under cannon fire. They were wrong. For every attempt to break the humans only revealed more of their strength. And soon the Empire would face not just laughter but the full measure of humanity's will. And that will, once awakened, would shake the stars. The Silurian Empire had ruled through fear for centuries. Their ships darkened skies, their cannons silenced rebellions, and their banners stood as symbols of unbreakable power. But the humans, with their strange habit of laughing at danger, had become a crack in that image. The High Lords had ignored it for too long. Now they would act. A fleet was sent to the colony of Asteron, a growing human settlement on the edge of Calorian space. The order was simple: subdue the humans, seize control, and prove to every watching species that the Empire's will could not be mocked. Admiral Valar led the operation. His fleet of 20 warships descended through the system with the precision of a storm. The ships glowed with power, weapons armed, their engines humming like thunder. The Admiral believed this would be quick. After all, how could a small colony resist the might of the Empire? But Asteron was not unprepared. The humans had no great fleet, no massive weapons, and no shields capable of standing against Calorian firepower. What they had instead were minds that refused to give up and a spirit that refused to break. In the weeks before the fleet's arrival, scouts had warned the colony. Instead of panicking, the humans laughed at their impossible situation. "Well," one of them joked, "if they're coming with cannons, we'll just have to welcome them with pots and pans." And so, they prepared, not with despair but with creativity. Engineers built defenses out of scrap metal, turning broken ships into barricades. Farmers dug trenches and lined them with reflective materials to confuse scanners. Pilots reprogrammed old mining drones, strapping them with explosives to use as decoys. Children even painted the colony walls with bold, bright colors, as if daring the Empire to try. When the Calorian fleet entered orbit, the humans gathered in their central square. They did not hide. They stood together, their voices carried through comms across the colony. Some cracked jokes, others sang, and when the first warning message came from the Admiral, "Surrender or be destroyed," the humans answered with laughter broadcast on every channel, the sound of thousands, laughing together carried into the comms of Calorian soldiers. It was not the laughter of mockery but of unity. It unsettled them deeply. Soldiers looked at one another with confusion. Some clenched their fists, others lowered their eyes. The Admiral ordered silence, but the sound remained, strong and clear. "Begin the strike," Admiral Valar commanded, hiding his unease. The Calorian cannons roared, targeting empty areas near the colony. But when the smoke cleared, the humans were still standing, their laughter louder than before. They had expected death, yet here they were, alive, unbroken. Then came the surprise. The mining drones launched from hidden bays, swarming toward the fleet like a cloud of angry insects. They were not powerful, but they were clever, zigzagging, darting, exploding in bursts of light. The Silurian ships fired at them, but the confusion slowed their attack. Meanwhile, human pilots flew small, patched-up ships with reckless bravery, weaving through enemy fire while laughing over open comms. "Careful," one pilot joked. Don't scratch the paint. Oh, wait, we never had any paint. Their humor spread like wildfire. Solarian soldiers listening to the channels felt their hands tremble. How could anyone laugh while facing such certain destruction? Admiral Valar's frustration grew. "Destroy them," he shouted. Yet the harder his fleet tried, the more chaotic the battle became. The humans had turned desperation into strategy. They made every loss into a joke, every danger into a reason to smile. And that smile broke the rhythm of the Empire's control. On the ground, the colony's defenses lit up. Scrap-built weapons fired at low-flying ships. Trenches created traps, and hologram projectors made the colony appear larger than it was. Children and elders hid in bunkers, but even there, the sound of laughter echoed through the walls carried by radios. The battle dragged on longer than the Admiral expected. His ships were superior in every way, yet he could not silence the humans. Worse, his soldiers' morale wavered. Some began questioning the orders. Others whispered that the human spirit was stronger than their weapons. In one squadron, a young Calorian pilot hesitated as he lined up his target. The laughter of human children played on the comms broadcast by the colony. The sound froze him. He lowered his weapons, unable to fire. His commander yelled at him, but doubt had already spread. Then came the turning point. A human engineer, working with nothing but scraps, managed to overload a damaged Calorian frigate. The explosion lit up the sky, a bright star above the colony. The humans cheered, laughter bursting from every voice. The sound carried through the entire system, echoing in every comm channel. The illusion of the Empire's invincibility shattered in that moment. For centuries, no one had dared resist openly. Now a small colony had not only resisted but laughed in the face of the greatest fleet. Admiral Valar stared at the flames on his screen, his pride broken. His fleet had not been destroyed, but something far worse had happened. The humans had shown the galaxy that the Empire could bleed, and that fear was not unbreakable. He gave the order to retreat. His voice was sharp, but his hands trembled. "Fall back. This is not victory, it is disorder." The Solarian fleet withdrew, leaving behind a colony still standing, still laughing. News spread like wildfire. Across the Empire, whispers grew. The humans resisted. The humans laughed at the fleet. The humans fought with scraps and still won. In marketplaces, Solarian citizens laughed for the first time, imitating the sound they had once thought strange. Soldiers secretly chuckled at memories of human jokes. And in the halls of power, the High Lord sat in silence, realizing that something far more dangerous than weapons had entered their galaxy. The humans had not shattered ships. They had shattered the illusion that the Empire was unchallenged, and laughter was the weapon that broke it.